The Stalker series, or Stalker Shadow Chernobyl, Stalker Clear Sky, and Stalker Call of Pripyat as a series, or trilogy, was basically a unique Eastern European originated FPS adventure game that was developed by GSC Game World and published by THQ. And basically, it presented a very unique gaming experience for me, loosely inspired by Roadside Picnic and Stalker, the 1979 Andrei Tarkovsky film. It basically took place in the zone of alienation, or in and around parts of Chernobyl. For those that know, in the 1980s, there was a terrible nuclear disaster that really affected the area in and around Chernobyl and basically made the area uninhabitable. How this relates to the story, it basically creates a setting where the area is basically very unlivable, and people are barely scraping an existence out. And the only reason that they're there is because various anomalous activity in the area has led to the creation of artifacts, or objects by which anomalous activity in the area, or rifts in the laws of physics, has created basically objects that are endowed with special abilities or powers. For instance, alleviating the gravitational pull of the Earth for a relatively small field, and alleviating the burdens of whatever you might be carrying, or basically filtering out radiation so that you can basically wander throughout the zone and not succumb to radiation poisoning. Things like that. And so the scientific community and various other organizations throughout the world were very interested in what sort of benefits that these artifacts could sort of present to them. But obviously, with the financial and scientific benefits, there came the allure of riches to be had. A lot of people come to the zone for various reasons, either to escape the law, seek adventure, find their fame and fortune, or to basically operate under the law, as the entire area is basically lawless. And so, as a trilogy, the game sort of focused on a amnesiac who was simply known as the Marked One. You unfortunately do not know of your identity until later in the game. I don't want to spoil it too much, but basically you're known as the Marked One, and your name basically translates into gunslinger in Russian. So yeah, the Stalker series as a whole was developed by a Ukrainian developer, as I mentioned, GSC Game World. Oddly enough, a lot of the people in the game speak in Russian. I guess Russian and Ukrainian are very similar languages, but instead of speaking in Ukrainian, you speak in Russian. And as far as sort of the veneer of the game in its entirety, it really sort of spoke of a sort of Russian-based Stalker, like Russian-based Fallout. Because the game, it sort of fools you into thinking that it's a post-apocalyptic environment, when really the rest of the world beyond the zone is operating, functionally as it does right now. But the game came out in about 2008. It was a really hot, buggy mess. Its charm was really in how unique the setting was and how the game mechanics worked, and basically just the sort of Russian backdrop of a faded, the communist era, personified as, the architectural design and the Art Deco fixtures of a faded and worn-out environment that you would wander through. And basically, it was very faction-oriented. There were a lot of various groups operating in and around the zone. As they related to you, they would give you unique quests that sort of shed light on their particular rivalries between factions, as well as the Ukrainian security forces or military that would basically shoot on sight and eliminate anybody that happened to be wandering through the zone. Ironically, the Ukrainian military were probably the largest faction, the largest single faction that basically led to the phenomena of stalking. And I say that in quotes. It's not stalking as in like you're stalking people. Stalker is a unique acronym that basically translates to, what was it? S is scavengers, T is thieves, A is anarchists, L is looters, K is killers, E is ecologists, I believe, and R is renegades. So Stalker is supposed to be a blanket terminology referring to everybody operating within the zone. But yeah, as far as how it impacted me, I routinely played Stalker just for the experience of being able to wander through basically like a sandbox adventure sort of, platform of the game. And, really just explore every nook and cranny, like look into all of the ruins, the burnt out ruins that you can sort of partake in, looking into. And exploring like various options that were available to me as far as what I wanted to do. And you have a lot of freedom of choice, but the game does get a little bit, boring if you're doing the same thing every day. Same shit, different day. So it sort of like boiled down to me that the game experienced a rebirth for me in the fact that you could sort of download a multitude of mods that basically enhance your gaming experience. My personal favorites are Lost Alpha, which is like almost an entirely different game based on the Stalker series. It basically sheds a far deeper experience than Stalker Shattered Chernobyl did, which was the first game that came out in the series. Stalker Shattered Chernobyl was basically a trimmed down, incomplete game that was, heavily rushed to be released, but it was a fairly enjoyable experience for me. Stalker Clear Sky was basically like Stalker Shattered Chernobyl, but, set before Stalker Chernobyl, Shattered Chernobyl as a prequel, and it basically shed light as to why the zone was so fucked up in Shattered Chernobyl. Clear Sky, Call of Pripyat was, the third installment of the series, and basically was just a continuation of Shattered Chernobyl. And so, it took place in an entirely different world, different location apart from, Shattered Chernobyl, where, you had the same set of, locations that appeared in Clear Sky. It focused on an entirely different character. It focused on, an entirely different scenario, that your character was basically a government agent, or should I say member of the military, that was sent in to undertake a mission as to determine why a mission that was spearheaded to go into the heart of the zone failed, and to try to rendezvous with the survivors of said mission. I'm not spoiling too much because you pretty much figured that out in the first 2 minutes of gameplay. But no, it's definitely something that I would highly recommend for anybody today, but obviously the game probably hasn't aged that well, but it has still a very dedicated following, being such a unique experience in and of itself. So as far as the actual experiences that you would have in the zone, there are basically a multitude of different dangers that, pose a threat to your well-being as an individual. Mutants are pretty much everywhere. They take the form of mutated pigs, mutated boars, mutated humans, mutated dogs, mutated, Some of the mutants, it's difficult to pin down whether they're human-based or animal-based because of how they appear. It's almost as though they are a amalgamation of various creatures put into one singular being that is just, aggressive to everything else but itself in its own, and, will kill you in pretty horrific ways. And, it's kind of a terrifying experience, honestly. And there's a multitude of different locations that sort of, explore the darker aspects of, the zone of alienation. And, the various, sub-areas inside of the zone. And, the Ukrainian military, as I mentioned, are fairly ruthless in how they'll, basically gun you down if, you're anywhere near their vicinity. And they will even send heavily armed gunships to try to mow you down in a hail of gunfire. You are considered a loner. A loner is considered a free stalker that, ventures out into the zone to do whatever they think is necessary or, wish to pursue. Usually accumulating supplies or artifacts to sell. As I said, there's a lucrative market for the sale of said artifacts, and that's part of the allure of what brought most stalkers to the area. And so the area has basically managed to create its own sort of economy and ecosystem of mercantile activities. So yeah. The three games, I would definitely recommend playing all three of them. They have very unique, you know, game mechanics that go into that. Obviously, it's a very FPS-oriented game, but you have to sort of factor into account, at least in some mods, a sort of survival aspect of things. For instance, you have to drink sufficient water and food to sort of survive, and possibly, gain some health. You have to be mindful of how much radiation that you've soaked up, because radiation will start to kill you after a while, probably sooner rather than later. And you know how the best way to get rid of radiation is? Drink lots and lots of alcohol. I'm not sure how drinking alcohol is going to alleviate radiation sickness, but hey, I guess it'll make the pain go away. So yeah. There's also things called emissions or blowouts, where basically a highly concentrated energy dispersal will take place, and anybody caught out in the emission will either get obliterated or they'll become a zombie. Yes, zombified stalkers do exist for the series, and in some cases, conventional zombies exist. Basically, irradiated creatures that have had their minds just completely wiped away clean by either controllers, which is another mutant that I referenced, or the effects of various like brain scorchers, or the brain scorcher as a device is a creation that's basically will destroy your mental faculties and reduce you to being little more than a zombie that acts on very base instincts and is strangely hostile to everything that happens to come across its path. So yeah, I hope I'm doing a decent job at conveying, why it is that Stalker sort of drew me into the series. I have this strange admiration and respect for games that go into a very sort of post-apocalyptic, bleak portrayal of a experience. And so Stalker, the story is pretty solid. I like the gaming aspect of things, and I like the setting, and all of the just the look and appeal of the game. You can buy various body armors to sort of protect yourself. The best being the famed exoskeletons. Basically, I guess the most realistic portrayal of what you consider power armor in the real world. Basically being some sort of exoskeleton with armor placed on top of it. But yeah, don't expect to get anything for free. You're gonna have to pay out the nose for anything in this, what I could pass for an economy. And so it's just, I don't know, it's a lot to think about, and it's a lot to consider. But if you want a unique gaming experience that's pretty much like a Russian Fallout, definitely consider buying this off of Steam. I certainly did. And I'm not going to say that the game has been completely free of bugs and glitches, but for the most part, it's playable, and it has gotten, I can get pretty far in the game without having to experience too much of an issue. So it's definitely stood the test of time as being something that's still playable and enjoyable. So definitely consider getting into the Stalker series as a gaming series to pursue. I've been wanting to see a sequel to all of this, to the series. I've been wanting to see a Stalker 2 come out. And while there's been a lot of talk about that, it doesn't seem like it's going to happen. Basically, the developer has faced a lot of financial strain, and I don't think that there's a whole lot of interest in the gaming community besides the hardcore fans like me that would actually want to see something like this come about. And I've seen some various games on Steam that sort of try to borrow from the whole Stalker veneer of gameplay. Servarium on Steam is one example. Basically, it borrows from the anomaly aspect of things, and it sort of brings about the whole idea of you're in sort of a post-apocalyptic situation. You're basically fighting off against various factions that are trying to kill you for whatever reason. The Next Day is another example of this. It's basically like Stalker minus the mutants, and is primarily focused on, I guess, faction-based infighting. But yeah. Something that I forgot to mention is anomalies. Anomalies are rifts in the laws of physics that have basically created in most cases, a hazard of sorts for stalkers. Basically, it's as being a, rift in the laws of physics. They come in multitude of forms. There's one called the Whirligig, which basically is like, I don't know how else to describe it besides being like sort of a highly concentrated area that's unstable, and if you venture into it, it basically throws you like up at the speed of sound, and your body basically gets ripped apart. Like, you, quite literally in the game, if you venture into a Whirligig, you just get thrown up and your body like blows into a million giblets of bloody, like, you know, sinew and, you know, bloody chunks, and it's just like, yo. There's one called, I think, you know, fruit juice or fruit punch. Basically, it has the look of being like acid, and it pretty much is acid. And it creates a couple of unique artifacts that you can like loot from it later. But as an anomaly, it's something that you want to avoid at all costs, you know, because you're just pretty much going to melt away as soon as you know, fall into it. There's one called, I forget what it's called, Flash or Scorch or something. Basically, it just radiates, like, you know, fire in all directions. So, you know how you trip a anomaly? Is you have, like, an infinite supply of, like, metal bolts or rusted bolts that you throw ahead of you. And you try to trip the anomaly or to detect if the anomaly is even there. It's weird. Some anomalies are borderline invisible. You can only sort of notice that they're there based on the shimmering of light, like reflecting off of it. But you're not really entirely sure what kind of hazards you're going to be running into, and some areas are definitely more anomalous than others. So it's something to consider. But yeah. So some recommendations as far as mods going forward. Definitely want you to consider getting Lost Alpha. It basically provides a much deeper, richer experience into the aspects of Stalker Shattered Chernobyl than the game Stalker Shattered Chernobyl gave. It sheds a lot of light on who you are as an individual, as well as basically what led up to the zone being as it is now. I didn't mention a lot of things earlier. One thing I will mention is that the whole anomalies and various rifts in the laws of physics didn't come about just because of the radiation. It came about because there were various experiments going on in the zone taking place after the, you know, the 1980s nuclear disaster. And there were, like, groups operating within the zone. Actually, one group, I should say, but subdivided into various operating teams that were, you know, related to said group, that basically had been conducting experiments that broke the laws of physics in the area, leading to various anomalous activity as well as the mutants running around. So, you know, it's not just coming out of thin air. There is a reason that all this takes place in and around the zone. But yeah, some other mods that I can recommend is Call of Chernobyl, basically combining all three games into one. And it's not really story-based. Basically, you just go out and enjoy a free experience going out and around the zone and all the locations taking place in all of the other games. And your interactions and experiences with others are going to vary. You can, depending on your faction, you can recruit others to be in your group, and you can just go out and explore and basically enjoy a free experience. There's the Misery mod, which is a Call of Pripyat unique specific mod, basically making the game much more realistic, but also a lot harder. Things are a lot more expensive. Your character takes damage far more easily. Depending on what type of, you know, protection or armor that you decide to wear, it will affect your character's fatigue or basically, if you wear like a eco suit, like a completely protective suit that protects you from radiation and anomalies, your character's going to get a lot more fatigued, and you're not like able to just run around like you used to be able to. It sort of takes a more realistic approach to how things affect you. And the economy is a lot more realistic in that everything's a lot more expensive, and it's a lot harder to make a buck nowadays. But, you know, such is life, right? That's pretty much all I can think of off the top of my head as far as recommendations I would make. There are a couple of mods out there that I would definitely have wanted to get my hands on, but being the fact that I'm running out of disk space and I really need to focus on building a better gaming rig, an actual dedicated gaming rig, it's going to remain to be seen whether I actually get to that point. So, the Stalker series, definitely highly recommended. I really want you all to just get out there, buy this game, buy like the various games in the series, download some mods, and have a unique gaming experience that is basically Russian Fallout without the Fallout. So, that being stated, I hope you enjoyed the video, guys. If you like, why don't you hit that like button and hit subscribe for more. This is Tujo Panda signing off. Till next video, guys, take care and peace. I hope you all have a better one.
А ну, чики-брики в дамке!